Hey folks, it's Jenny and I'm back. It's been a minute since I did a video. This particular one's for YouTube. And I have some stuff, feeling some joy in my heart, and I'm also weighted down by a little bit of heaviness. This video today in particular is to my family. Blood family, family by marriage, whatever the situation is, if I'm related to you in any way, and the condition of the country. I've never been into politics or interested in any of that. I grew up in Massachusetts, which I'll tell you a little bit more about, but that's why I'm basically addressing my family. And if I reach anyone else in the process, hallelujah, that would be great. Grew up in Massachusetts, which is a very, very blue state. We weren't a big political family, but like everyone there, we loved the Kennedys. It was a time, I feel, when I was growing up, that the left and liberals were still for the working class people. We still had, a high rate of Catholic families, pro-life. It was really sincerely moderate. And the part that wasn't kind of happened the year I was born, in the 60s. On recommendation from Candace Owens, I just got this great book, Chaos. I would recommend to read anything that she says to read. If you don't know or haven't watched her, subscribe. Subscribe here first, but then go over and check Candace out. I think she is one of the most brutally brave, honest, courageous, alternative media sources that comes with so loaded with receipts, it's not even funny. It's not even funny. But I want to clarify a few things from my family, because we've been a divided family from go-get. My mother had 2 children before me and my youngest sister were born. Her husband passed away, and she married my father and went on to have myself and Janine. There was always a conflict between myself and the 2 older siblings. Not so much the brother. He was just a love, pure love. But the sister, the half-sister, there was always a tension, a division, a conflict. It was an abusive upbringing. I'm just being real and I'm being honest. I'm not crying boo-hoo here or asking anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm over it. Life worked out very well. I have 2 beautiful children. I have a wonderful husband. I'm crushing it more at 61 than I did at any other point in my life before. But I'm just going to be for real and honest about all of it. They've had an opportunity to, and they've passed every time. It's either change the subject or just stop all communication, which is basically what happened with a niece that I loved so much. I say that past tense. It's not past tense. A sister, not so much, half-sister, for a lot of good reasons. But getting back to the important message, and I do tend to divert a little bit here, so I digress. I'll pull myself back in. To the political side of things, growing up in Massachusetts, like I said, we weren't a political family. We were, I'm going to say, vaguely Catholic. We got some of the sacraments. It wasn't a huge deal, especially after my parents' divorce. It wasn't something that my mother pushed or really stayed on top of. Our catechism classes, church in and of itself, etc. I was banished from the family at a very young age, at 13 years old, after literally years, I'm talking toddlerhood, of violence, physical abuse, mental, emotional abuse, but most of all, the thing that did the most damage were the lies. The half-sister was totally complicit and even directly involved in the abuse. Just not a nice person. I don't know what else to say. I remember her, as do the people that she treated poorly, as very, we used to call her very snobby back then. A lot of narcissistic traits. Now, she has 2 daughters that I love with all my heart and soul, and they absolutely adore her. I wouldn't want it any other way. And they will defend her at all costs. but she hasn't behaved towards them and treated them the way she has treated family before they were even born. There was a narcissistic trait, a resentment. All of a sudden, she was not the center of my mother's world, even though she kind of still was, because my mother had remarried. She couldn't stand my father. She resented me. I was the reason my mother remarried. And she wasn't too happy about that. So why she went on to have a second daughter, I'm very grateful she did for my little bean. She'll know who she is, my baby sister. But she did. She went on to have children. And she got a raw end of the deal, but she was kept in the home and raised by my mother. I was the it child. And the physical abuse, severe, I mean bleeding, swollen faces, started very, very young. And they can hate on my father all he wants, but he would call all throughout the day, and the guy was taking off for work and worrying about his kid. And the biggest part of processing that was not so much the actual abuse, as horrible as it was. A lot of it I thought I made up in my head until I saw friends that I grew up with later on in life who remembered it. I don't know if I tried to shut it out. I'm sure I did. Who wouldn't? But it was horrific. It was horrific. I don't know what they thought was going to happen as puberty happened, and of course I had twisted ideas on relationships and boys, and drugs started really early on. I don't see, especially at 13, 14, my mother signed me over to the state initially and officially at 13. And I was blessed to get a social worker that's probably one of the kindest human beings I've ever met. And that was it. After that, when we're talking DSS, CPS, it is the most corrupt, crooked, abuse of power agency out of all of them. And they're all pretty bad. If you do a deep dive and you look into the history and what started changing in the 60s and what they've done to us with food, with drugs, it's disgusting. It's despicable. So back to the politics. We didn't speak of politics very much, other than, I always got the vibe we loved Kennedy. And I personally did everything that I saw and learned about him. I've been past the compound in Hyannisport, and they all have as all rich families do, as all families do, period. They have their dark, deep secrets, some have even gone as far as to say, there was a curse because they died in such horrific ways. So in other words, that they're human. They're human. And yeah, their sins weren't that highly discussed because the sins against them are so much worse. But back to the point again. Didn't grow up in a political environment, but let me tell you, anybody whose family was not big on politics, according to the state you were in, especially if you were born in the 60s on up, you got influenced by coincidental learning. In other words, you just go along with whatever your family thought or felt, what was taught in the schools, what was the vibe of your community, your state, all of it. There were some democratic feelings and thoughts I held strongly to simply because I picked them up along the way. I was raised Catholic, kind of converted to non-denominational Christianity after that, but grew up in a state where Roe versus that was celebrated. That was actually celebrated. And if I'm recalling this correctly, that was based on a father trying to save his baby's life. That entire case, when fathers were actually involved and weren't horrified at the idea of getting somebody pregnant. And I don't think it was ever meant for what it wound up being used for. What was it used for? It was actually a birth control to some people. It was aimed against the Black communities. All the Planned Parenthoods basically went up in those communities. They put them into a welfare state. But the rule was you don't have daddy in the house under any circumstances. If you want these benefits, you pop out as many babies as you want, but the father is not allowed. So it was the beginning of the destruction of the nucleus of the American family and a control over the black community for their vote as they held them down, as they quenched them, as they shut them up, as they threw them in projects, and they did rob them from opportunities and education. And now they're just abusing it by letting them in with no merit whatsoever. I'm not talking about just blacks, anybody. The people with merit who deserve it, they earned it, they work for it, can't get a good education. And then the education that is allowed in, regardless of what race you are, is absolutely ridiculous. Just like Kamel is there, guys. We all know the truth. And if you don't, you're stupid. I don't know what else to call you. She's there because she was black. Well, she was Indian back then. But we all know she's been black and Indian all along when she worked in California. And Joe was looking specifically for that particular hire. There was no merit involved in it. She didn't have a good rate when she was working as, what was she, DA in California. So there was no strong political convictions or stands that she took. She has a record for letting some serious crimes go and locking up petty stuff. I think it was a lot based on her feelings of the day. Watched her first interview last night. She was absolutely disgusting. I mean, I guess she was told not to laugh. Thank you. That was such a break. But getting back to the point of the safety of our country, the basic moral system, and my family, who I know is very, very leftist, anti-Christian, at least one niece. I didn't even use the name Jesus in a text that I had sent her about transgenderism. And she started freaking out about Jesus. Don't put Jesus on my page and blah, 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 blah. Just real hateful. And, obviously very leftist beliefs. And I thought most of Massachusetts was still like that. But I had put a few things on Facebook. I made a post to a family that I grew up with, big family. I'll call him Mike Sullivan, not to use his real name. And I was friends with his sister mostly, but he was posting a lot of kind of right-wing stuff. And I said, wow, it's really good to see folks from Massachusetts are opening up their eyes. And we grew up with a picture of Jesus and Kennedy next to it, and we were Democrats all the way. And he flew back at me like, we have not voted Democrat since they shot Kennedy. Good to hear. Good to hear. A few of the women I know still hold strongly. One I'm going to do an entire Risa Tisa Legion type video about. She's just really that evil. And caused a lot of damage throughout my life. And this isn't out of bitterness, revenge, get back. I've just gotten to a point in my life where I'm not even fighting for. I'm living in the truth. And I'm stating it. And I am open to be challenged by any of these people at any time. Okay, so the sister's a total bitch. She was completely abusive along with my mother. Glad to sign me over. Take me out of the family, and then blame it all on drugs, which I did have a problem with. Who wouldn't? Under those circumstances growing up? I fell in love with the first guy that paid attention to me, and would basically take anything I could get my hands on. And then the drug of choice wound up being cocaine. So, and I was just out of the family. You can see a couple of baby pictures growing up when my face wasn't bruised or all messed up. And then all of a sudden it stops for 10 years. And then basically what happened is, I did get clean, but I also married money. I married a really, really nice guy who had money. So I don't think it was so much based on my getting clean even. This guy had money. So in their eyes, all of a sudden, that made me valuable. And in their eyes, that gave me some worth. And they took advantage on a house that we bought from this sister. They took financial advantage of him. I'm not even going to get into that because this is about politics. It's just, they were pretty horrible. They were pretty horrible. And my heart has softened. I have wanted and have actually reached out trying to make amends, bring the family together. My oldest is kind of neutral, and my youngest adores his auntie. She's treated them in their adulthood basically the same way she treats her own kids, so they don't know that side of her, and I hope to God they never do. But she really doesn't bother with them that much, and she has a lousy judgment on my oldest because he had a drug problem, that he has now just gotten a year. So love you, son. So proud of you. But this was a process with the Democrats in power. And boom. So now we land in 2020. There's some things you can't say on YouTube. So when I say, flu, talking about what happened to everybody in 2020. And I'm going to say what everybody has kind of implied, but I'm not big enough or important enough or have enough views to really actually be arrested for telling the truth, as some have, or gone after. We look at Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, Christian Tate, Russell Brand, all these. It used to be somebody would commit a crime, and then they would try to find the perpetrator of the suspect and gather up evidence and commit them of that crime. Now, these people of power and influence that have importance and can reach the masses, they find the person first and then go look for a crime and try to make it stick. They've done it to Trump with all these trials and ridiculous convictions, and the way the left states it, the insurrection, it has been proven. Tucker Carlson got a hold of the video where they were calmly walking through. He did walk out. He asked for a peaceful protest. Period. End of it. He cannot control what some nuts did, but they really didn't do a whole lot. It was just absolutely ridiculous. He knew he was screwed over. He was pissed off about it. He did not incite a riot. And of course, he did walk out of the White House with his head held high. And all the work that he had done, Biden steps in a little bit calmer. All right, I'm going to give it to you with Trump and the tweets. I was even getting annoyed in 2020. I shut down social media. Still voted for him. And I'm going to tell you what happened in that voting process for the first time in my life. And they can blame it on that flu, whatever the situation was. Every time I voted in my life, you get a thing in the mail or now email where you have to go to vote, according to your district, maybe a school or church or wherever. Your district, your area votes at this place. You then go to this place, you register at the table. They have to have your name there. One year, I went to the wrong place, so I couldn't put my vote in there. I had to go to the right place. I then had to show identification that I was who I was. We then went into these booths alone, electronically made our vote. That was it. 2020 comes along. I get there, and there was a long, long, long line. And the volunteers, and this is Georgia, are coming on down the line and just handing out a sheet of paper that you can vote on. So you'll be ready. It'll go quicker when you get in because the lines are so long. So in other words, I'm pulling out my license. Of course, they need to identify me. No need, ma'am. You're fine. And you don't have to do it on paper. You can wait till you get in there, but if you want to speed it along. And they handed out a ballot for everybody to vote on to the end of the line out into the parking lot. And you just slipped it in somewhere. Not once was anybody registered, checked, asked for identification. So, yeah, it was bullshit. It was absolute bullshit. This is the stuff they were pulling, and then this is why I honestly feel it was absolutely stolen. It's just so easily provable, just based on my own experience, let alone all the other facts they have gathered around it. And now I'm going to say what I haven't heard. I'm sure somebody else has said it. That flu in itself, I find very, very curious now. You know, I think it was absolutely deliberate. Trump was crushing it. He wasn't one of the good old boys. He wasn't playing the game. He was making all the shots. China wasn't too thrilled with him. Time to pay up. Time to pay your fair share. We're going to bring our business back home where it belongs anyway. And they locked down and cleaned up so quickly. You talk about lockdowns and what it did to us here. They knew it was going to happen. This is what I believe. This hasn't, I'm going to give you some verifiable, absolutely things I can prove, but this is my theory. I think they released it deliberately, fully anticipated what was going to happen, and it was to take Trump out of the game. A lot of people were pissed off. The anti-vaxxers were pissed off because he pushed it through so quick. I'm just thinking, President of the United States, we have this strange pandemic, something, we've never experienced before in our lifetime. And we're demanding, basically, that he do something. We're panicking. What was he supposed to do? Nothing? Wait and see? I think they have control of the strains, and the 2021 in particular was a deadly one for some and to some. I have it right now. I'm positive. I've had it a few times. Very, very interesting. So close to the election. This is just my theory, my hypothesis. This isn't factual. It is to me, but it might not be to you. This strain is very, very weird. We're real close to the election, and my husband got it first. We always joke around because I actually had it on my honeymoon, and he always jokes around that I tried to kill him. I gave him that flu. But anyway, I have it now, and this is a bad one. No hospitalization required, but the symptoms are hideous, and the longevity of them, and the main symptom of these COVID strains, and this one is really bad, has been brain fog and confusion. So I think it was very deliberate. I think they released it on purpose. China was prepared for it, locked it all down, cleaned it all up. And I don't think Trump realized it was happening as it was happening. I'm sure he knows now. That's my theory. Now for some facts. Camilla, at her interview with Dana, I'm trying to think of her last name. She said some warm, fuzzy things, but didn't give any real answers. Now, all of a sudden, she's talking about, Hamburg's up 50%. Loaf of bread's up 50%. Back to school clothes. She's talking middle America, the standard family, and a realization all of a sudden about the inflation that her administration caused and could have fixed this entire time. After COVID simmered down, we got back on our feet and we opened stuff up again and didn't kill everybody's business and affect our children so severely with not being able to go to school or be with their friends or loved ones for months and months on end in some states. All right. So that's my theory. Yeah. Factually, she's actually saying, she is bragging about numbers coming down for the southern border, which I believe was El Salvador that was coming in, and how those numbers have been down since she's been in charge. The first thing the Biden administration did out of pure spite, with no logic behind it, certainly no benefit to the American people, was undo everything Trump had done. There is no way to get around the destruction of the country. I know division. I grew up with division. My family chose to continue the division. So I made new family. I reconciled with my baby sister, my only full biological sibling, same mom, same dad. And that's it. I had to accept what was never going to be. And then finally got to a point, even if the other sister came around, I'm good. I'm good. I like the truth, you know. And part of the reason they hated me, I was that kid who I cannot ignore the elephant in the room growing up. We were secrets. We didn't talk about stuff. You know, maybe it was embarrassing, and sometimes it was just obvious. That big elephant was there. You know, things like, you know, my dad going off to jail and my mother choosing to let me believe he just was blowing me off on his visitation. You know, until finally I begged in tears to tell me the truth because I knew he'd never do that. And he was locked up. But so she lied about a lot of important things. And my sister absolutely backed and supported her, both in the physical violence. She babysat one night, and I had stepped on something that punctured. It was the top of a model of a ship, and it punctured all the way up to the arch of my foot so deep. It was a little microscopic puncture wound, but it went in almost to the top of my foot. Pain was excruciating, blood everywhere. I was screaming for her help, and she was like, get a Band-Aid. She really did. She was that obnoxious. I had to call my mother at work and pound home how serious this was. There was blood everywhere. She put my sister on the phone, and still, I'm not dealing with it. They're your kids. You know, she was 16 then. You know, people babysit. If she was babysitting somebody else's kids, that never would have happened. It was a personal hatred towards me, period. And it continued for the rest of our lives until she did something so horrific to me, or got involved with agencies and people that were doing something so horrific to me. I believe today she's just too embarrassed to deal with it, to face it. But my kids know. My kids know the truth. That's all I care about. All right. So we can see what the Biden administration has done to the country. They have attacked the nuclear family, the heart, what makes America run. They have destroyed masculinity. Everything that has to do with a man being a man is toxic now. There's 53 friggin' genders. They're pushing gay porn in school, which I don't know if it's just they're not going to admit it or they really believe it. I told a niece about that in Massachusetts. It was all over Facebook because it just so happened about 14 miles down the road from where she lives, there was a 14-year-old girl that was scheduled to have her breast removed, and her mother was rah, rah, rah about the whole thing. And, you know, when I mentioned how prevalent it was, you know, that children, minors, were getting their breasts cut off, she went, you're out of your mind, you're crazy. I don't know if she really believes that or she's just in denial because it's just a shameful thing to allow to happen and not care about it. But she made herself sound like she would easily let her own daughter do that, which is absolutely horrifying and terrifying. And I'm glad so far her daughter hasn't, or her son hasn't. And I think she would be singing a very, very different tune had that happened. So the country's basically wrecked. My boys are now hard-working boys, middle-class, blue-collar workers. They have to make a choice between their car payment, insurance, or their rent and food. It cannot be done. Even my oldest has a fiance, and even with 2 incomes, they have to rent a room in a home because they don't have the money to buy a house or even rent their own apartment. So everyone is being forced back into the communal living. I see my youngest. I knew it was going to be harder for him to totally obtain independence from me. But he has, you know, and I know he's working his butt off. And there's just no way for him to get ahead in this administration. We need Trump back. End of story. This bull on abortion and what they're saying Trump's stand is just, it's such a despicable lie. It actually nauseates me. Look, Trump is pro-life. He rightfully believes that that should be between a mother, her doctor, her healthcare professional, her circumstances, and he's throwing it back at the states. Government shouldn't. They're calling it healthcare, women's healthcare, or reproductive healthcare. No, no. There is so much involved in women's healthcare. There are so many aspects to that. They're talking about abortion specifically, very specifically. Now, look, I understand and I know some people that had circumstances where they felt it was necessary. And I also know to this day, they remember the birthday. They remember the pain of it. I know women who use it as a form of birth control. They get pregnant, go get an abortion. I know women who felt they weren't ready. It was an inconvenience to them. Period. I know adolescents who wanted to have their babies and were pushed and pressured, even though legally you couldn't force an adolescent to do that. And the way it's been abused, they lied to the DNC. Oh, I wish I could recall the lady's name. The one that claimed she had a life or death situation, a later pregnancy. She was pregnant with a little girl, I forget the name of the disease, but it was something 18. And basically what happens with this condition is, the baby might die during birth, shortly after. The commentator knew of one, the sweetest little girl who's now in her teens, but the odds that they will pass young or even during birth are high. But it's no danger to the mother whatsoever, as far as the mother's life is concerned. It's unfortunate and it's sad, but I guess that little girl was of absolutely no value, no purpose, was randomly created and randomly got this disease that would terribly break the mother's heart and inconvenience her. So she lied. She stood up at the DNC and stated, she was in the state of Texas. Her life was in danger. And because it was a later pregnancy, I think second trimester, they would not help her. She had to go to another state for her health care. No, it's abortion. It's not health care. It's abortion. Health care is a whole lot more. Just one tiny, in my opinion, horrific part of it. So it was an inconvenience to her. Yes, there could be some sadness involved, but it was a lie. She was not ever in any danger. She just decided, she had 2 healthy kids that she was happy with. I don't know if she went on to have more. So she went to another state and aborted, like, after 3 months. I don't know exactly what month. Her life was never in danger. And, so they'll have it like, if you have a miscarriage, Trump will try to put you in jail. He's throwing it back to the states. Is it going to be a little bit more difficult? Yeah. So, hey, ladies, guys, try this. Try not getting pregnant so you don't have to deal with it. Seriously, the rate of teenage and child pregnancy skyrocketed. Women's lives have changed. They put off childbirth till they're older and older. And Trump, that's another thing. Trump is a big supporter of IVF and alternative methods because he's a supporter of families and babies and children. Who are you or anyone to deem which life is worthy of birth and which life is not, based on the mother's convenience? It has nothing to do with her friggin' health. And if it does, Trump takes that into consideration. If you have a situation where the mother's going to die, preeclampsia or something like that, they'll have to do a C-section or induced labor. And, hey, Michelle Duggar, not my favorite person anymore at all, Her little Josie was born at 25 weeks because she had preeclampsia. And yes, it was very, very tough. She had severe medical problems, but she's a beautiful, healthy, thriving little girl today. Just in a really mixed up, legalist, religious cult family. But this is the deal. So the libs that I still know, friends and love in Massachusetts, they're all coming around. They all see the truth because immigrants are like, oh, they're overwrought in Massachusetts. The hotels are filled up. They're getting cards and money and phones, and yes, they have the ability to vote, especially when you don't have to show identification and you have a and if you do, you have a driver's license. They don't ask for citizenship. Yes, they vote. But the truth is, Dems, the joke's on you. Because guess what? Once they get over here and they get working and they have their driver's license and they get a jump start, do you think they're really going to stand in line to vote for you? No. And when Trump talks about removing illegal immigrants, of course, the first thing he's going to do is go after the sex traffickers, the drug dealers, the criminals. He just wants verification. I'm sure if you have some wonderful family coming over from Mexico who is really trying to better their lives, give their children a better life, have more opportunity, he will work something out with a visa or a green card. They're just friggin' liars. The left, and the only thing they're running the whole campaign on is hating Trump. Kamala could barely answer one thing without knocking Trump. And the way they make it sound is such propaganda. It's incredible. This girl I'm going to do a Risa Tisa Legion one on. I'm going to call her Miss Voluptuous. She'll know exactly who she is. She basically got knocked up at 16, got divorced after her youngest graduated high school, kind of a welfare Section 8 mom. Look, I'm not knocking it if you need it, but she's never worked a day in her life. She never even really tried. She did some hocus pocus new age stuff at one point and hit people up for $250, and that didn't work either. So, and she also gets a brand new car every 4 years on welfare and Section 8. Very curious to how she does that, but nonetheless, took a couple of courses at a local community college about 10, 15 years ago. I forget. And they talked politics like they will talk politics in colleges in Massachusetts. So all of a sudden, she's a political genius. Let me tell you something about highly intelligent people. They will never sit there and tell you how intelligent they are. When you have someone saying, she actually said, I dumbed it down for you. And I grew up and was in special classes for the elite and the highly intelligent. And I felt like I just had to dumb down for you because you wouldn't understand. You moron. I always understood. I always knew what you were up to. I always saw the jealousy. I always saw the bitterness, the cattiness, the sneakiness, the evilness of you. Period. And so she goes on. The last time I talked to her, she went on a rant about how Fauci was an absolute medical genius. And oh my God, please tell me you don't watch Fox, because of course she's just choking in CNN and all those stations. And unreachable. She doesn't want to lose her cozy situation. The state completely takes care of her. She's never had to work a day in her life. Now the last baby that she had in her mid-40s is growing it on his own, and she's getting kicked out of her Section 8 place. I'll be curious, And one of the last things I asked her, too, are you happy? Nah. She's had every autoimmune disease, allegedly. More of that has to do with knowing what kind of drugs she wants and what kind of diagnosis she wants to have. Period. I don't believe it. I don't believe she had any of this stuff. I knew her for years. And it's just bullshit. I digress. Look, it's pretty obvious what Kamala has done, could do, and isn't going to do. People that are voting for Kamala are doing so mostly nothing based on her ability or her policies. They dumb down on what's actually happened. It's out of hatred for Trump. Learn the truth. Learn the truth. I'll never probably see most of you again. I'm speaking to my family. And that's very, very unfortunate. I visited my niece and her husband with my husband at the time, who's very Christian conservative, when that was mentioned. And he didn't kick us out. He actually left his own home. I wonder why. Why there's such a hatred and a bitterness against that. You know, the right to bear arms, pro-life, doesn't mean in certain situations you cannot make a informed medical choice with a legitimate, neutral doctor. We don't need Planned Parenthood. We just don't need it. It has killed millions and millions of Black babies in the community. Hey, ladies, all of us, all you young ladies, I was the same way. Very irresponsible. I wasn't able to get pregnant till later in life, or I probably would have had a dozen kids. How about keeping your legs crossed? How about, if you can't do that, use something. I'm Christian and I am so pro birth control. If you don't want to get pregnant and you're going to have sex, ideally, saving yourself a marriage, especially as a woman, I think is a virtue. It's a novel idea, and I also know it's not realistic. Use birth control, prevent a pregnancy so you can prevent an abortion for an unwanted baby. If you do find yourself pregnant, you better do some serious soul searching. I know a lot of women that had some even multiple abortions, and there was a regret and a pain, no matter how necessary it was. And this is not a judgment on them. There's a judgment on the ones who used and abused it, you know. But the harshest judgment comes from the liars at the top in the White House, the Democratic Party. They're not Democrats anymore. They're not the Democrats that I grew up with, that believed in America and the little guy, you know, the Kennedys. RFK has joined forces with Trump. This guy is so on it with the health crisis and the bullshit going on with that. It's just unstoppable. Between Elon and him backing Trump, it's incredible. There's a lot of power for good there. You want to challenge me and tell me politically, policy-wise, based on what the Biden administration has done so far and what she's saying she's going to do, which isn't much. She sounds good. She sounds like she's relating to the blue-collar workers and American middle class all of a sudden, you know, weeks before the election. If she was sincere about that, she could have done something about that a long time ago. Donald Trump did not leave the flu mess for them to clean up. I think they deliberately released it for Trump to get out. Oh, I'm not big enough to get arrested or jailed for saying what I believe to be the truth. And why we still have that freedom, that's what I believed happened. I implore my family to seek your hearts. You don't have to know Jesus. Apparently you're so dead set against him. Don't worry about it. But worry about your kids and your grandkids and the state of affairs. Is this the America you want them growing up in? Because it's not the one you had privileges of growing up in. It's not the same. We all played a part in it, especially my generation. We believed what we believed. We imparted it down to the next generation, and it's just corroded more and more from there. Folks, check it out. Check the facts out for yourself. Check the lies out for yourself. And the 2025 thing, proposal, oh my God. Heritage Foundation made it. Trump really didn't know anything about it. The way they have distorted some of the the propaganda and the lies are just so brazen, so obvious, so apparent. You have to be either stupid or totally brainwashed into it to actually believe any of this stuff. The only thing I can vaguely understand is the blue states are pretty big on abortion. That's what they want. And so that's what the whole campaign is running on. You know, that Trump's going to have you arrested if you have a miscarriage, and if your life is in danger, and you're going to have, it's such bullshit lies. Listen to what he said, because he did everything that he said when he was in office. Look at the country when he was running it. We were thriving. My sons, my blue collar workers, would be able to buy a house and make their car payment, insurance payment, stock up their refrigerators, and take care of their families as men. They don't have a shot at it right now, and they are men. They have proven themselves over and over. They don't have a shot in this administration. They know it. They're voting for the first times in their lives this year, and we're voting for Trump. Period. Period. I implore you, check it out. Don't go by what you think you know. Get your facts straight. You want to challenge me or have a conversation about this or with somebody else? Listen to Candace Owens. Listen to Russell Brand. You know, Candace is the only one so far that hasn't been literally arrested on bogus charges. And she said the most. And she comes, like I said, armed with receipts. Check her out. Find out the facts. And Little Miss Voluptuous, we're going to be doing a video about you pretty soon. And I hope you'll all join me for that, because this chick is wild. I mean, pure evil in the form of jealousy and just deception beyond belief, and thinking she's a whole lot smarter than she ever was a day in her life. All right, I'm going to check out. This is going on too long. It was to my family. I hope you say it. I'm going to send it. Watch it. They probably won't. And I guarantee you not one of them is going to challenge me on it. You know, I know my niece, I'll call her Amy, her husband had subscribed, and he was the one that was most appalled with my family when I was down there being conservative Christian, to a point where he left. The guy left his own home. He wasn't rude, wasn't nasty. He just left until we, and didn't come home until we left. So please, I'll call him Jerry. Check it out for yourself. I implore you. Please, people, my precious grandnieces and nephews, your babies, is this really what you want for them? A public drag show? Putting dollar bills in a G-string at the kindergarten library? You're pretty well protected because you're in Florida and DeSantis doesn't play that stuff. You can pick and choose where your kids want to go to school. And if there's something going on, I believe Florida is still pretty much on top of full parental involvement. And, you know, this niece, I'll call Amy, I know you'd be all over it with your kids anyway, as will her husband, you know. And my other niece in Massachusetts, who, please tell me you just didn't want to hear it, but please tell me you don't really believe this isn't happening. I've seen some of the, I blocked her since then. She got so disrespectful. I ain't having it at this point in my life, so I just blocked her. But I'll unblock her and give her an opportunity, and I can promise you, you will be the first to know if any of them respond, giving me a justified case for the Harris administration and not getting Trump back in to clean up the horrific, devastating, moral, financial, political wars, everything mess that they've made. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.